Have you ever had a particularly rough morning after a few too many drinks and in a hungover haze told yourself, never again? And yet somehow, never again seems to fade away, and a few weeks later, or even a few hours later, if you're like me at times, you're back in the same situation all over again? Well, it's no secret that I personally had a stressful relationship with alcohol all through my 20s. I was a notorious binge drinker. I blacked out often. I made mistakes that I frankly don't remember and only learned about from ashamed recountings of my friends the next day. I spent nearly a decade in basically a drunken, blacked out stupor. And I spent more money, time, and energy drinking at bars than I care to remember. Not that I could if I wanted to. But over the most recent 7 or so years, my relationship with alcohol has completely changed. So if you're trying to change your relationship with alcohol, whether that means getting completely sober, or just cutting back on the drinks that you know are adding to your tummy and making it harder for you to work out the next day, then this episode is for you. Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Levitin, a board-licensed wellness coach who has been helping people just like you create positive change in their health, wealth, and relationships for over 12 years. Annie Grace, the author of This Naked Mind, said, "You drink to get the feeling of peace that someone who is not dependent on alcohol already feels." It's not a question anymore. The verdict is in. The science is clear. Alcohol is bad for you. Period. Full stops. There's no a few drinks that are healthy. There's no redeeming health qualities of a couple glasses of wine. But yet, on the other side of that, drinking can still be fun. It is social. And for better or worse, it's a part of our culture, at least for now. And this is why I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation with Molly Watts. Molly is an author, podcaster, speaker, and self-proclaimed alcohol minimalist. Molly helps people find a healthy relationship with alcohol, whatever that looks like for them. For some, it's complete sobriety. For others, it's having a few drinks once a week, but in a controlled way that feels good for them. In this episode, Molly and I discuss what it means to have a peaceful relationship with alcohol, how to understand alcohol's impact on your body, as well as the power of mindset and self-talk in controlling your relationship with alcohol, and most importantly, how to navigate the social and societal implications of drinking less or not at all. Depending on when you're listening to this, maybe the holidays are right around the corner, or you're in the new year, so what a perfect time for this conversation with the alcohol minimalist, Molly Watts. What does it mean to have a peaceful relationship with alcohol?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? For me, I think that when I started using that phrase, everybody was like, "Wow, I love that." And then they were like, "What does it mean?" And I said, "Well, peaceful really means something different to everybody, right?" I think that for me and for some people, and the reason that I use that word is that I want to be really clear with people that it doesn't mean a specific quantity, but it does usually mean drinking quite a bit less than what people are typically drinking when they at least come to me. And for some people, it might mean that their most peaceful relationship is zero, is being alcohol free. And for a lot of people who are considering making changes to their drinking habits, which is really what I fundamentally talk about, is that's a big deal to them, like this idea that they could never drink again. And so having that mindset, they never want to even take any action because they're like, no, I'll never get there. I don't want to do that. I never want to be completely alcohol free or sober. And because that's the only way to have a peaceful relationship, I won't do it. And so that's not what peaceful means. For me, peaceful means, and this is for me personally, I stick to low risk limits as defined by the National Institute of Alcoholism and Alcohol Abuse and the CDC. And I use those limits, those low risk limits, as guidelines for myself. And that is what is peaceful for me. It also means that I prioritize alcohol-free days, and I have definitely increased and added more alcohol-free days into my life over the last few years. And again, that is just for me. That's what peaceful is. But everybody's got to find peaceful for them. But what I can tell you is that in my world, less alcohol is more peaceful.
Yeah, I love that specifically that it's unique to the individual. And as you said, that thing of like a quote unquote better relationship with alcohol is not drinking at all is a very restrictive route to success. It's the same thing as someone who says like, well, I don't want to start working out because I know if I work out, I have to go to the gym 5 times a week and lift weights. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, if that's the only way you can think of working out, I can see why that would be pushing you away from it. But if you find other things that are exercise, like dancing or like rowing or hiking or things that you actually enjoy, that it becomes more inclusive. And it's very scary to say I'm never allowed to have anything ever again, especially when alcohol is such a big part of our lives, our society, for better or for worse. So how do you start to detach those things? Because I feel like that is a stumbling point for people. Is this like, yeah, I want to drink less, but everything I do involves alcohol.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that is part of the work that I do with people is separating the narrative, the story behind alcohol, the thoughts that we have around alcohol, and the actual truth of the situation, the facts of the situation, right? I tease people sometimes and I will say, like, did you know that you actually can go into a bar and order something that does not have alcohol in it? Well, I'd never do that. I would never go to a bar if I couldn't drink. And I say to them, like, okay, well, we have to think about that. We have to challenge that idea. Like, why would you never ever, right? When we think in absolutes, and that is really a problem in the way alcohol is framed for us as a society, because we get a very black and white, all or nothing, absolute narrative, especially from the recovery industry. And there's no two ways about it. Alcohol misuse and alcohol abuse are problematic for people, for society, for all of us. And it's something that anyone that's going to include alcohol in their lives has to be cognizant of. You don't take something into your body that if you're not aware of what the potential possibilities are for misuse and abuse, right? That being said, there is the possibility of doing everything that you've ever done in your life around alcohol and even while other people are drinking, and you can still do it all and not drink. And that's the part that takes a lot of work around the mindset. And I think that's where, your and I's worlds align, is because it's really all about change, is about changing the thoughts that you have around alcohol. And that makes taking the action of not drinking way easier.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, all the words that you're using, mindset, stories. Is that a story or is it a fact? These are things that I use all the time, again, with alcohol, but with every change that we're trying to make. So much of what we do, we believe that it's like it has to be this way or this is just how it is. But again, if we pull on that thread a bit and go, but is that really the case? We start to see that it unravels with just a little bit of scrutiny. So I'm curious about what are some of maybe the mindset shifts that you've seen, either that you had to incorporate yourself or that you've worked with people, just so I can have a more like concrete example.
Yeah. Well, I think that I use this one for myself, and it's certainly something that I see with the people that I work with too. And pretty much every mindset shift that I help other people do, I had to do too. And for me, probably the biggest one was that I literally believed, and when I say believe, I mean it was something that I didn't question, that I never didn't accept as true, that I needed to drink to relax and unwind at the end of the day. That was my mindset. I needed to. And those were that's the way that I thought about it. And after I started understanding the power of my own thinking and the power of my mindset, and really had started working on my own relationship with alcohol, I tell people about this story about when I was leaving work one day and I got into my car and I had a commute, and it was long and lots of traffic. And I got in my car and the immediate thought came in, I need a beer. And that was the thought. It was a very clear sentence, I need a beer. And it was in that moment I sat there and I thought, oh, wow, that's really strange that that's what I thought I need. I don't need it. I want it. And there's a difference. But my thought was I need. And when I thought I need, I felt the sense of desire, the urge to drink increase. And it was like that moment that I thought, oh, this is how this works. Like I am literally thinking myself into creating more desire to drink. So that's fundamentally how I help people. There's so many stories that we have. Like, I need to drink to relax. I need to drink to have fun. I get to drink when I get off. It's as a reward at the end of the week. Lots of things that people hold on to that they don't ever question. And when you have those thoughts, they actually fuel the desire for alcohol. It isn't the alcohol itself. What I wanted was to feel relaxed.
It's a great example, and I appreciate you using an example from your own life. As they say, the best research is me search, and it's the same
Yeah,
thing that it's the same way that
for
I've
sure.
discovered all of this stuff is just like through my own fixing myself. Longtime listeners of the show know that I have had my own struggles with alcohol. I don't talk about it as much as often because it's something that I've kind of just left in the past, but I'm not like shy about it. It's definitely something that I had to change about my habits and everything like that when I first started to go on the journey of personal growth, personal development, health, wellness, whatever you want to call it. I just came to a point where I realized that drinking to excess, which I was drinking to blackout 3, 4 nights a week, partying and just doing all the things that I was doing it couldn't live in the same world of wanting to be a better person and do the things that I wanted to do. So I had to kind of go through all that myself. But it's interesting. You said that story that you told yourself is like, I need to drink to relax. And I think that that's a big one. Again, not just with alcohol, because I deal with people with eating a lot, and that's a big one. I eat to relax or for stress relief. And as you said, the question I ask is that true? Because the question I like to ask people is the stress that you had before you ate actually relieved after you eat the bag of candy? If you're stressed about work, if you're stressed about an argument you got in with your spouse, your partner, your kid, and then you go and you eat a pint of ice cream or a whole pizza or something like that, did that make the thing better? Did that make
Right.
did it actually relieve your stress? Like, oh, well, no. Well, then you have to be more deliberate with the words that you choose. And often it's also finding a replacement, because it's not like, hey, don't eat that thing for stress relief. It's, hey, maybe we could find something better that actually does help with your stress or something like that. So I'm curious, what are some of the habits that you found that you had to plug in replacement for drinking or the other things that you were doing?
Yeah, well, first, I totally agree, and because if we don't, if we are, it's very easy to plug in another replacement habit that may not seem like as bad as the first one. So we're like, oh, this is better than not, I'm doing this because at least it's better than not drinking. Well, that's still not solving for the problem.
Hey, real quick, we'll be back to the show in just a few seconds, but right now I have to ask you for a huge favor. If you're getting value out of this episode so far, take 2 seconds and share it with a friend. I mean, right now, literally, hit the little share button and send it in a text to your roommate or your cousin or your mom or your brother or your sister. Seriously, spread the love. If you like what you're hearing, then that's the best way that you can show support for this show. Because maybe you're like Eliza Kay, who said, this podcast is both warm and inviting, but real enough to push and motivate me. Or you're like Dalton, who said, Paul is an amazing host, and his podcast is a must listen. Don't you want to share this awesomeness with your friends and family? Don't be a gatekeeper. It only takes a second. It helps me grow and reach a new audience, and you seem like a genius friend who recommends new, awesome podcasts. We all win. All right, go send that text, and now let's get back to the show.
We want to be, I like the term, energetic, creative problem solvers with my thoughts. One of the things that was really important for me, understanding that my thoughts create my feelings, understanding that connection, thought, feeling, and the feeling of stress is also created by your thoughts. So the circumstance of having a frantic day at the office or having a disagreement with your spouse or having, you name it, right? We all have abundant, busy, whirlwind lives. I used to tell people I was the most dramatic person I knew. Like everything was a stress. I mean, I have 4 kids, so I'd be like, I work full time, I have 4 kids. Come on, like I'm automatically stressed. This was my mindset. And understanding that I was literally creating stress by the way that I was thinking about my life, like, just, I could have told you, like, I'm a 100% commission salesperson. Obviously, I'm stressed. Well, there was another narrative there about that job. Like, I had a lot of freedom. I was unscheduled. I could go where I wanted to go. It was a very creative position. I had great coworkers who I really enjoyed. I got to do a lot of fun things. There was other pieces of the puzzle of the narrative of my job that I could focus on. And when I focused on those, suddenly I wasn't as stressed out because I was actually in control of the narrative. So, first and foremost, we got to address our thinking about what's causing us stress, in my opinion. And then, yeah, we got to look for other options because this isn't to say it's all about positive thinking and trying to make everything rainbows and lollipops. That's not the way it works. It's about understanding how you can help yourself feel better in a moment, take it down a notch by realizing that there's also another perspective here that's going to help you feel better. And then looking for opportunities to practice better habits that care for yourself, that help you relax and unwind. For me, I love taking baths. I read books. I love a hot cup of tea. I like taking walks. There are certainly other productive, peaceful, calming activities that I can do that are far more, just to your point, far more directed at actually helping me relieve stress when I feel it, in addition to understanding what thoughts I have that are creating it.
Yeah, I love the point about changing what we even consider stress to be or what is making us stressful. I love the, change the root, change the fruit. I'm always talking about peeling back the layers of the onion. And the deeper that we can go, we can actually get to what is actually the cause of the thing. The result then changes as a result. And as you said, it's like stress, that stress is not real or is not a finite thing because the same things stress different people different ways.
Right.
And the same things don't stress everyone. Something that stresses you out might be fine to your husband or your kids and vice versa, right? Like my girlfriend gets very stressed by the dirty clothes where I get more stressed by the dishes, but she's fine leaving the dishes where I'm fine leaving dirty clothes. And it's like, well, clearly one of the two of those is not more stressful because if it were, it would be stressful across the board to everyone. But if we can change the way we look at it, we can change the way it actually affects us. But when you talk about changing the way something affects you and the way that we look at things, something I've heard you say before is, I no longer drink to change how I'm feeling. But my question is, for someone who's drank plenty in the past, or for someone listening, I would assume it'd be, why else would there be to drink? Like, isn't that the whole point?
Yeah, well, I would say no. I would say I actually I enjoy the flavor of an IPA on sitting outside and enjoying the flavor of a beer. I like it. I enjoy a glass of red wine with an Italian meal. I like those things. I enjoy them. And so when I say to drink the feeling, to take away a feeling, okay, there's two things. I will absolutely acknowledge that the very first drink that you drink, right, which I talk a lot about blood alcohol content and about understanding how it impacts your neurochemistry, but the therapeutic level for alcohol is from 0 to 0.055%. It really is that first drink, and in that therapeutic effect, if we want to go there, is what happens to your neurochemistry. And that feeling is different than an emotion, okay? That feeling of what happens when your brain chemistry gets a little bit out of balance, because that's what happens. Alcohol affects both GABA and glutamate almost immediately. And you get this kind of euphoric, a little bit relaxing, if you want to say it, that feeling. It's different than the actual emotional state of relax, but just right, the feeling of euphoria, kind of that initial sense that alcohol, I enjoy that. I'm not going to say that I don't. I think that anybody that drinks alcohol would say that's what they like. It's not, you can't chase it. It doesn't work out that way. And that is something that I am very clear about and understand. And I can still enjoy that one glass, and it feels okay. It feels good to me, and I'm comfortable with the level of risk associated with it. But to not drink to change my emotional state, that's the difference. That's the key. I'm not going into it thinking, oh my God, I've had such a terrible day. I need a drink to help me feel better. That is not the way that I use alcohol.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and seems like a much more healthy, peaceful relationship to have with alcohol in that way. So I totally understand that. Could you go a little bit deeper? I don't want to get too sciencey, but I do think it's worth exploring, considering everyone in the world has some sort of relationship with alcohol, whether it's drinking or being sober. That's still a relationship in avoidance. So like you mentioned, what the safe levels are, what goes on in our body. Is there, what are the negative, because people say, like, yeah, well, I know alcohol is bad for me, but like, how bad is bad? How much is bad? Like, is there like a level of like functional alcoholism where it's like, I'm okay, like I'm good. I know for you it's one drink, but like I have a high tolerance, like I really need like 5 to get going, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So everybody's blood alcohol content or ability to metabolize alcohol is really dynamic. So that's the first thing. I typically say that, and I'm all in on science-y over here, me. I like to talk science. So I say things like every time we drink, it's kind of like our own personal petri dish, right? So it depends. Every time you drink, it kind of depends. It depends on how much you've been drinking over the course of the last week. It depends on how tall you are, how much you weigh, what your gender is. It depends on how hot it is outside. It depends on how much food you've ingested. All of these things impact our ability to metabolize alcohol in the time that when we start drinking. And so when I say, and I want to be really clear. So the safest amount of alcohol is 0%, right? Therapeutic is from just the strict, if you're looking at alcohol as a drug, right? And it is a class 1 carcinogen. It is a drug, and it's ethanol, right? That's the ethanol is the chemical reaction, or is the chemical inside of the alcohol that we drink. And that toxin, whatever drug coming into our body, has just like penicillin or any other drug that you take into your body, has a therapeutic impact on the brain. It has an impact on our whole and many other organs in the body, for that matter. Alcohol pretty much impacts every system in the body. The only therapeutic, and when I say therapeutic, that would lend towards like looking for an outcome. It doesn't even necessarily mean beneficial, right? But it's looking for the outcome that the alcohol is supposed to achieve. Alcohol is a depressant. And so in the brain, it slows down our neurochemistry. That's what creates the feeling of euphoria and relaxation for us, right? Well, that therapeutic level stops at 0.055%. For most people, that is going to be 1 to 2 drinks, depending again on all those other factors that I talked about. From there, as you creep up, as your blood alcohol content increases, you continue drinking and you go from 0.055%. A lot of people are very familiar with the 0.08%, because 0.08 is what is considered to be legally intoxicated in most states here in the United States. And so a lot of people are familiar with like that blood alcohol content level, right? Well, there's a lot of in between 0.055 and 0.08 as you're climbing towards that. Once you become legally intoxicated, right? What I say is that now all the benefits that you achieved, or that you're therapeutically, were therapeutically there from 0 to 0.055%. Now you're building up and going the opposite direction, where the consequences of over drinking are going to outweigh any therapeutic benefit that was there in the beginning. And every step that we take towards 0.08%, and then even beyond that, right? Because after being legally intoxicated becomes unconscious, becomes eventually and could lead to death if you really kept on and raising up your blood alcohol content. So that's what I mean when I talk about everybody's threshold. As far as functional alcoholism and like daily limits and all of that, there is no, when, according to the NIAAA, who really is, so that's the National Institute of Alcohol Use and Alcoholism and Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, sorry. They have a test, and we can certainly link it in the show notes, a characteristics. And really, it isn't even about amounts of alcohol. It's about characteristics of how you're using alcohol. That's how they categorize someone as having alcohol use disorder, which is now what we would have used to say someone was an alcoholic. So it's really based on behavior and whether or not, and a self-diagnosing tool for that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that, again, it's just kind of important to understand,
Yeah.
because like, alcohol is so pervasive in our society. And, it's interesting you bring up like that now alcohol use disorder, alcoholism, whatever you want to call it, is now more defined by behavior rather than like a certain amount over this many drinks. Because like you said, we're all different. 6'8" lumberjack, versus
Right.
me, the amount of drinks are going to affect us differently. But it's about the behavior that we have around drinking, and behaviors are so important. Before you said, thoughts create your feelings, and they also lead to the behaviors. So I'm curious if you could explain a little bit about your behavior map that you use to help people navigate their way
Yeah.
out of this type of stuff.
Yeah. So really, I mean, just like you said, so for me, the behavior map, I call it the behavior map result cycle. And it's really just fundamentally tools people have heard in it's very much rooted in cognitive behavioral therapy. But I just look at it this way, this visual helped me in terms of understanding it, because I see the behavior map and the result cycle as really being able to explain just about anything we do or don't do in our lives, right? And you can kind of move along the axis, and you can move along inside of this and see, or delineate where you are, and then kind of look either direction as to how you got there or where you want to go, right? So you can start. For me, it's on the far left side is the circumstances of our lives. And the circumstances are they are the things that are the facts. They are the neutral things that everyone, and it's sometimes it's really, we get even there, we can get confused. We think that we're talking about a circumstance, and we're actually already applying subjective narrative to it. We have thoughts about it, right? And so people have to really even like getting clear on what is a circumstance and what is my thought about the circumstance. That's how it starts. So the circumstance is on the far left. In the middle is the result cycle, and that's the thoughts, feelings, and actions. And that's what you were talking about kind of right there. And then on the right-hand side is the results. We can plug in any place. In the middle, I always say, is our feelings, because the feelings, we as humans, we put a lot of emphasis on how we feel. And like, people will say, and especially in behavior change, right? Well, I just didn't feel like doing X, Y, Z. And we have to be able to understand that feeling that we're looking for is created by our thoughts. And we can literally create any feeling that we need to have to take a different action to get a different result. And vice versa. We can also understand why it is like when you have the thought, even saying the thought, like, I just don't feel like it, creates a feeling of being unmotivated. And then you don't take any action. And then you have the result that is that you didn't take the action that you were trying to take, right? So that's really the fundamental behavior map result cycle. It's really, for me, it's being able to look at any result that I have in my life, good or bad, and understanding how, or I shouldn't say good or bad, better to say desired or undesired, and see how I'm reaching those by backing up. Because at the end of through all of it, kind of like what I was talking about saying before, like, I just automatically equated, like, I have a high stress, like I have a 100% commission job. Like automatically, therefore, I looked at that as that circumstance as equivalent to stress, and did not understand how my thoughts about it created the feelings of stress. Now, when I was feeling stressed out about my 100% commission job, therefore, I was not taking actions that helped me get better results in that job. I would take more actions like not doing what I was supposed to be doing, like procrastinating and doing things, because I would be fueling this constant sense of, oh, I'm so stressed out. This is so awful, blah, 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 right? It all matters what we think about things, because it helps us feel differently and take better actions and then get better results.
Yeah, it's so important, as you said, like we get so tripped up right at the beginning where it's like a circumstance that we put our thoughts onto, right? Like the job I have is a literal thing. It's a fact.
Yeah, that's right. It's just the job I
Right.
have.
Everything else is something that I put on it. So I'm curious, you mentioned there kind of right at the beginning that although you use this with yourself and with your clients around alcohol, this is something that can really be used in any form of behavior change, any type of habits that we're trying to build. So I'm curious for yourself if you've seen any of the things that you've learned, the tactics that you've put into place around alcohol play out in other areas of your life, and like where you've seen changes elsewhere from the stuff that you're doing around alcohol.
100%. I mean, I say all the time what I talk about is a meta skill. I think that it is, for me, alcohol was the place that I needed to address first. And I use the behavior map results cycle in all areas of my life, because I, it was this eye-opening, really like, s- just slap my face, wake me up kind of moment where I was like, oh my God, like I have been running around this with my life, right? I you only we As far as I know, we only get one opportunity to have a spin around the planet, and we get and no one else gets to make my life turn out the way that I want it to, turn out the way other than me. I mean, I'm the one controlling the narrative. And I can choose how I see my life. It isn't a matter of true and false. It is a matter of what I decide I'm going to believe. And when I decide that I'm going to believe, and it isn't even like, yes, there were stressful moments in my job. There's stressful moments in everybody's jobs. I mean, come on. It's not like that's unique. And there were great things. And I can choose to focus on all the stress, but all it doesn't change my job. It doesn't change the world. It doesn't change anything. It just makes me feel like crap. And that's my life, right? So that's when I figured that out, when this work revealed that to me, and it was like this idea, like I used to just listen to my brain unmanaged, unfiltered all the time. Everything that I thought, I was like, oh yeah, right, totally right, 100% accurate, right? Never challenged it, never questioned it, and allowed it to create this sense of feeling like I'm just overwrought, overwhelmed. Everything's terrible. And it's just a crappy way to live, quite honestly. It's not it leads you to feel like you need to relax and unwind every night with alcohol. For me, it did, right? I grew up with an alcoholic parent. I had a long history, a long story of believing that I was genetically more predetermined to desire alcohol more. So it was very natural that all of this crap that I had in my life, I needed to drink to relax and unwind at the end of the day. And not only was the crap part not true, but the fact that I needed to drink was not true. And once I figured all that out, I was like, you know what? This is a lot better. This is a lot better way to live.
Yeah, it's so funny as you say that. Like I was just living my life listening to what my brain said, and when you say it, like it's funny to hear it that way. But and you would think like, well, yeah, isn't that what you're supposed to do? But the reality is, actually, no. Almost never are
Right.
your initial thoughts actually the truth.
Right.
One of your brain's greatest power is it's a storyteller, and it extrapolates an entire narrative from a single piece of information. And what we should be listening to is the information and what we know to be true. And we have to learn to discern that. I love you said that, like a meta skill. And that's what I say that all the time on this show, because that's what this is all about. That's why I just talk about change, because once you learn the rules of change, you plug in your change. So for you, it was changing your relationship with alcohol. For some people, it's food. For some people, it's a literal relationship. That's like the thing, right? You said that was the number one thing I had to change. But through learning the skills to change that thing, I learned the skills to take back control for the rest of my life in other areas, in all, because all of this stuff plays by the same rules. And if we can start to learn that, we can start to take back control of our lives. So, when you talk about, again, specifically around alcohol and you're helping people, what is the biggest initial change that you've seen your clients undertake where they're like, oh, okay, this is bigger than like just my relationship with alcohol?
Yeah. I, you know, and one of the things that I really think about helping people see this is first and foremost is that it is changeable, right? I think again we get sold this story, especially around alcohol, right? It's not just a habit, it's a problem. Like there's a difference and this narrative that comes with alcohol. And so really just helping people see first and foremost that actually it isn't. It's not different than food. It's not different than your relationships. It's not different than working out. It's actually very similar and you don't have a problem and you're not broken and you're not powerless and it's not hopeless. You are absolutely 100% capable of making a change with alcohol that is, and you are completely in control of that. And so for me, I think just getting people to that thought process, getting them to see and believe in their own capability and their own power of creating change in their lives and being able to impact alcohol in that way and see alcohol in that same light is is the first part for me. It's really important. People have to move from it's impossible to it's possible to it's probable to I'm positive I can. And so it's a lot of and I for me educating myself on the science of alcohol, educating myself on neuroscience, neuroplasticity, understanding the science of the brain. You talked about like we shouldn't listen to our brain's first thought. Yeah, one of the reasons we shouldn't is because oftentimes it's coming from that lower unconscious thought area that we aren't even aware is coming, and it's very primitive, it's very instinctual, and it doesn't have anything to do with our logical, goal-oriented, future-focused, very human part of our brain. And I talk about that a lot about, our brains kept evolving and we developed this large prefrontal cortex, but we're not taught about it. I mean, we're really not taught to tap into our conscious, mindful thinking. And when unmanaged, most of us, and I did it for decades, our brains love to operate from a very primitive, more efficient, lower brain perspective, which is to avoid pain, to seek pleasure, and to conserve energy. And when we can do all that, then, there's no reason to think about it in our brains for our brains from our brain's perspective. It's like, good, let's do it. Let's just keep going. This habit, this serves us. This is great. And we have to employ that logical, goal oriented. Does it take more time? Does it take more energy? Does it take more intention? Yes. And is it better? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Anyone listening who listens to the show regularly knows that this is everything to me. I mean, one, what you said at the beginning there, of just letting people know that you are not broken. You are not less than. This is not a you problem. This is a
Right.
human problem. I think it's so powerful because so many of us think like, oh, it's so easy for Molly. It's so easy for Paul. It's so easy for my parents. It's so easy for whoever it is. But like for me, it's hard. And it's like, no, it's hard for everyone because it is the very nature of the thing for it to be hard because of what you just said, because you're fighting against millions of years of evolution programmed into your brain that want you to get safety and good feelings immediately, even to your own detriment, right? Even to your brain, like you just said, when you get that first drink, that gives you that little bit of that therapeutic feeling where it depresses some of your thoughts, and like to your brain that feels like safety because now you're not
Yeah.
thinking about all of those things that were stressing you out. Your cortisol doesn't have to be so high, and your brain is like, okay, this is good. It doesn't care that the next day you're going to feel like crap, or that you're going to continue to drink 8 more drinks and you're going to puke, or whatever the thing is going to happen that's going to happen. Your brain is always only concerned with survival in that moment. And that's not a you thing or a me thing. That's just a human nature thing. And that's the thing that holds us back in all areas of life. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, because it's like, again, I feel like that just being told that like it's okay,
Yeah.
you are
That's
okay, you are not broken, it can be so helpful for people.
Yeah, and I think once you understand, I mean, that's why again, for me, educating myself on the science of the brain, understanding that part about the, really believe, I mean, I call it our beautiful, brilliant human brains. I mean, our brains are really pretty incredible. They're really incredible, and they're really powerful, and left unmanaged, left and unsupervised. It's like handing a toddler a bunch of knives and letting them run around, right? You have to take action, and you have to go, hey, hold on here, time out. I hear you, the brain thought coming in, but I don't really think that's what we want to do. And it's, and I'm gonna be you said you, me, the world, let's just be honest. I'm not here telling you that 100% of the time I am successful at managing my toddler's mind, right? There's plenty of times when I allow it to take the control and do something that I'm not, that doesn't align with my long-term goals. That's human, right? That's not The good news is I have now the skill set and the tool set to understand and go, okay, well, that doesn't mean that we're going to not get right back on the hop back off in the path tomorrow and be better, and recognize what went wrong there.
Yeah, 100%. We're all human. Again, I never want to bring some type of narrative where I am like have all of this stuff figured out. Much like you, I just enjoy learning this stuff, the brain science,
Yeah.
the chemistry, because it's like, okay, now it makes sense to me. Again, I'm not crazy. This is
Right.
that's how I got into all of this stuff. It's like I was training clients and working with clients in fitness and nutrition and trying to help them change their habits. And I'm like, why is this so hard? Like, why is it that we have all of this information? We know, like, clients will come to me like, I know I should be drinking less. I know it's bad for me. I know it's messing up my diet. I know I'm working so hard to lose weight, and then I'm sabotaging it with drinking on the weekends, but I can't stop drinking. And it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Clearly, there
Right.
has to be something going on inside of our brains that is making this such a challenge. So for me, it's like freeing to learn this stuff, to go, oh, okay, like it's like I've been playing the game on hard mode the whole time. It's like you're playing the game on hard mode and you don't realize, you're like, why is this so hard? You're like, oh, because it was turned all the way up to expert, and I'm not an expert yet. So I appreciate you sharing all this stuff. And again, for me, for anyone listening, I feel like this is just like, it's always like a weight lifted to be like, okay, now again, that doesn't absolve you of responsibility, because now you still have to, if you want to fix it, like you said, when you figured that out in your life, when you're like, okay, like I only get this one life. I only get this one life, and it's on me to make the most of it. Like, now you have to do something with it. But to use that analogy, at least now you're playing the game, understanding how hard it is.
Right. Yeah. And I know how to look for my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions. I know what it means to take a moment and look for a better thought, right? And decide, oh, that's maybe the first thought that came in, not maybe the most helpful or useful thought. What would be a better thought? Asking myself questions. What else is true? What else can I, how would I, if I wanted to feel better right now, what would I think instead? And things like that. I mean, just having that kind of framework in place for me, yeah, makes me, makes me think, okay, there's really nothing I can't, nothing I can't overcome in my life.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the most powerful thing right there. Right? That question you just said, like, what would be a better thought? Right there, that can change your life. If anyone listening,
Yeah.
if you just implement that of like, anytime you have a negative thought, an intrusive thought, just a random thought where you're just like, again, that it's very likely that lower level brain that just pops in with like something to keep you safe or satiated, and then you can just think, what would be a better thought? And you just see that there are other options. So I really appreciate you leaving us that tool, Molly. I want to wrap up with the last two questions I ask every guest. First is, what is the change that you want to see in the world?
I want people to allow other people to express themselves in free and unfiltered ways, and not judge, not assign themselves the judge and jury. We get to be who we are. I think that humans have a fundamental, we want to be understood. And I think that's what we should try to do. Understand one another and not try to change each other.
Love that. And if you had one action step that listeners could take right now, today, as soon as this episode ends, as soon as they take their headphones out, to start making whatever change they're trying to implement, whether it's around alcohol or anything else in their life, to start making change just a little bit easier, what would it be?
It would be to start looking for your thoughts, recognizing where your thoughts are, and asking yourself those better questions. Asking yourself, is this my best thought possible? Is this helpful? I think, is this a helpful thought? That for me, because if you're having a thought that's making you feel like crap, it's not helpful. And there's another opportunity to have a better thought right there.
What I loved about this conversation with Molly is that she takes a real world view to help people change their relationship with alcohol. She isn't wearing rose-colored glasses, and she never proposes that it's going to work perfectly for everyone. The reality is that alcohol is here to stay. Even if you decided to never touch a drop again for the rest of your life, there's no chance that you won't be around alcohol, whether it's parties, airports, sporting events, it's everywhere. So you can learn from Molly and start to curate your peaceful relationship with alcohol. Start to notice your self-talk around alcohol and drinking, and see if you're thinking in absolutes when things really are more pliable than you think. Give yourself the chance to make a better decision, and you might just surprise yourself. That is change made easy. Before you go, I just have to ask you for a huge favor. If you enjoyed or got value from this episode at all, then take a moment and leave a rating and review in the podcast app that you're listening or watching on. If you like the show and you want me to continue to create more episodes and be able to get awesome guests that will help make changing your life easier, then this is the best way you can show support. You can leave a 5-star review on iTunes like Eliza K, who said, "This podcast is both warm and inviting, but real enough to push and motivate me." Thank you, Eliza. Or you can be like Dalton, who said, "Paul is an amazing host, and his podcast is a must listen." Thank you, Dalton. And thank you to all of the over 100 people who have taken the time to rate and review this show 5 stars on iTunes, or the dozens who have left 5-star reviews on Spotify. It only takes a minute, and it helps me grow, it helps me reach a new audience, and it lets me know that this is helping someone, which just feels good. All you have to do is go to the show page of whatever app you're listening to and hit the little 5 stars. Or go to the comments section on YouTube and boom, that's it. And if you really want to show love, take a screenshot when you do it and tag me in your stories on social media at Change Made Easy, and I'll shout you out in an upcoming episode. All right, go leave that rating, and I'll see you back here every Tuesday and Thursday with new episodes of Change Made Easy.